name is Brittany Dickhaus. I am living in El Paso, Texas right now. I hired Miranda as my coach back end of November. So I've been about 9, 10 months now into like the bodybuilding world. Did my first show early August and actually qualified there for nationals. So I did a second show in Vegas and then went to nationals last weekend actually at the
Nice.
North Americans.
Pretty exciting stuff. What made you want to get into the world of bodybuilding?
So I've always kind of been into fitness and, I did sports in high school, things like softball, cross country. And I feel like it was more so just for like that community aspect, like kind of being with friends and having fun. Like I went to a really small school. So if you joined the team, everyone made the team. Um, but from there, I, continued on going to the gym in college, put on some weight for sure in college, and then kind of just would go when I could. And when I couldn't, I didn't really care. Once I got out of college and into working, I definitely made it more part of my routine. And I was going, daily or 5, 6 times a week. And I wasn't seeing huge results. And then when COVID hit, I actually got a little bit more serious right before that time frame. And I was starting to think a little bit about bikini and competing. And then right when COVID hit, I was like, oh, there's no way. Like the gyms are closing. I'm not going to hire someone. So, I still did like my home workouts and things like that. But I recently moved from Connecticut all the way over to Texas. So once I got here, I didn't really have a friend group and family to hang out with. So going to the gym kind of became my little outlet. And then I, started seeing some results. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I could start thinking about bodybuilding again. I was following a lot of bodybuilders online and just like their YouTube channels and things like that. So that is how I reached out to Miranda.
It's funny you mentioned the kind of how you got into it via having nobody around you kind of that you knew and it became a place for you to go. That's kind of a similar thing that happened to me in college. I went away and I didn't really know anybody there. And it took me about a month or two. And I was like, what am I going to be doing here? Like, what's my thing going to be? And then I just decided one day, I was like, all right, we're going to go to the gym. Let me tell you about today's sponsor, Let's Get Checked. They're a worldwide leader in at-home testing kits, so you can get a complete look at your levels without leaving your home. They make it extremely easy to take your health into your hands. They take you step by step through the process of choosing the test you want, taking it, sending it back, and getting your results. Let's Get Checked is dedicated to making the process as simple and personalized as possible. Everything Let's Get Checked does is transparent while also offering complete privacy for you and your information. Let's Get Checked offers a wide range of tests so you can stop guessing and start knowing what's going on within your body. If you're ready to take your health and fitness in your own hands, check out Let's Get Checked at trylgc.com/theweightroom and save 25%. You can find the link down in the show notes. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee. When it comes to science-backed supplements that taste great, 2NS is your one-stop shop. They truly maximize quality by making their own supplements in-house. With over a combined 90 years of experience, 2NS's team of industry experts has a commitment to research, quality, development, and innovation. The body is sacred, so give it the best. Check out all 2NS has to offer at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com. Because bodybuilding is definitely like this. It's definitely more popular nowadays, just I guess because of social media and things, but more of like a almost underground community, especially 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It was very small, very exclusive. What really opened your eyes to bodybuilding? Like, was it just from the people that you were seeing online do it? Like, what made it almost like a normal thing for you to just think, hey, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I think honestly at first it was the draw of, how they looked. Obviously, that's you're like, wow, I want to look like that. And then it's more so for me, I always like to have a goal, and I felt like I lost that. Growing up, you graduate high school and you're like, oh, I accomplished that goal. And then you graduate college or whatever you're going to do. And you're like, I did that. I completed that goal. And then you get the job you want. And you're like, I did it again. And then once I had the job I wanted, and I'm super content in my job. And right now I don't plan on leaving. I don't want to move out of this job that I'm in. And I was like, okay, well, now I need some sort of goal. And so, working out had always been part of my routine. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just make a show my goal and winning my goal and things like that. And actually, my mindset has completely flipped on that now. But initially, that's what drew me in.
Gotcha. And whenever you first got into actually doing it and starting to train and things like that, was there, what I'm sure there was, but what were those things that were kind of, I guess a little bit, you didn't necessarily think they were going to be the way that they were?
Initially, getting a coach, the thing that I almost expected was like changes weekly. I was like, oh, they're going to change my workouts and my food and all this. And, I hired Miranda and she's like, honestly, we're going to be doing the same workouts. And I saw huge results doing the same workouts when, by myself, I was doing different things every week. I wasn't really doing like the same split and things like that. So that was like a big thing. And I think that's something that people get nervous about because they're like, oh, well, if they're not changing my stuff weekly, then what am I paying them for? But that's what you're paying them for is they have that knowledge to be like, this is what your body's going to respond to. Let's stick to this and figure out the best way to build that muscle, change your diet, get those results. So I think that was the biggest thing where I was like, oh my gosh, we're not changing anything, but it ended up working out really, really well.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's something that I always want to do is like try something new, add something in, make something a little bit different because we're so, we're creatures of like we want that satisfaction and we want to see something when we make the change, we want to see that change.
Exactly. Yeah, you want like the new and fun, but that's just not necessarily where it is.
So when you started and you picked a show and you were going on your prep, that first prep, tell us a little bit about that experience. What kind of obstacles did you face and what kind of hurdles did you have to kind of overcome during that first prep?
I think for me, the scariest thing was like choosing a show and setting a deadline and like knowing that I'm going to have to step on stage, which obviously is the goal is to step on stage, but that's the thing that terrifies me the most. Like I can do the diet, I can do the gym, but like being the center of attention, even if it's for a brief period of time, has always terrified me. Like I've come a lot out of my shell doing this, but kind of putting yourself on stage and saying like, oh, judge me and tell me what I could do better at was really scary. So I think just kind of getting that out of my mind while I was working up to that was kind of a big obstacle to overcome, and just like gaining confidence in myself and the things that I wasn't used to. So like walking in high heels and being in a small bikini in front of people when you're not at a pool. So I think it was just like learning to present myself with my head held high and just being like, I did the work, here I am, and now I'm gonna step on stage and let you tell me if it was good enough.
After that first show, though, was it all kind of like, this is like what I'm supposed to be doing, this is what I want to do? Or did you ever question, maybe this was good, this was a fun experience, but it maybe isn't the thing I want to keep doing?
So I think coming off stage, it was just like surreal. Like I just remember walking off and I just kept looking like and Miranda has videos of me and stuff because I just didn't expect the outcome. And it was a smaller show. There wasn't many people, but I ended up leaving, with um true novice in my class in novice, open, and the novice overall. So I ended up leaving, with 4 trophies, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it was good enough today. And sometimes, it is just about who shows up because it was smaller. Um, but right then I knew like we're going to jump into another show because initially we had only planned one show this year. And then, I got off stage and we're walking around and I'm like, what do you think of a second show in 3 or 4 weeks? So I think I knew I was right where I wanted to be.
Yeah. And do you feel like because your first experience was so positive, you had that victory? How do you think that maybe that's, it sounds weird, but played like maybe negatively into your experience as well?
So I think it was good in the way that like it gave me that confidence, like I could do this again. I played it out in my mind, like what if I didn't win these trophies? Would I still feel the same? Would I still want to do another one? And I think the answer still there would be yes, because no matter what, I stepped on stage and I was the best that I'd ever looked. And to me, that was a lot. And even just getting on stage was a huge hurdle that I overcame. And, I've seen just everything that I've learned in bodybuilding permeate to all aspects of my life. Like I'm much more able to reach out to people, to have discussions in person. Like I would never approach someone at the gym before and just have a normal discussion. And now every single day I talk to someone new at the gym. Even like FaceTiming and things like that. I FaceTime Miranda because we're not in the same state, and I never thought I'd be FaceTiming a coach. Like I wouldn't even FaceTime my friends, and now here we are FaceTiming doing a podcast, which is just couldn't even imagine it 9 months ago. So I think regardless of the outcome and the trophies and all of that, the growth in myself is kind of what pushed me to want to keep going.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20. Online at mybapparel.com. Ready to take your supplements to the next level? 2NS is here to help. 2NS strives to help you attain the highest degree of health and performance. Combining cutting-edge science and the best from nature, 2NS gives fitness enthusiasts and athletes the fuel they need. Check them out at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
What do you feel like you learned the most about the process, about yourself when it comes to like how your body's responding, how you're mentally responding? Like, what do you feel like from before that first show to then before that second show that helped you take the stage a second time?
I think honestly it was, that feeling of like I belong here too. I'm worth it too. I think a lot of times people play that comparison game and you walk behind stage and you see your competitors and you're like, oh, today might not be my day. And I definitely felt that the first show because I had never been backstage. I'd actually never even been to a bodybuilding show, which is pretty crazy that my first one was the one that I was in. But the second show I walked backstage and I saw these women and I was like, oh my gosh, these are my competitors. But then, we're lined up and you're always chatting. And I always love chatting with the women backstage and they're so nice and their personalities are crazy. So I just, I had a sense of belonging there in the second one. And I walked on stage with double the amount of confidence that I did the first time. And I think that was just a really good feeling to know, like, whatever happens, I held my own against these women and we all worked hard to be here. So I think it was just like, I have a lot of respect for every single person backstage and even now more so for myself too. So that was huge.
What does that confidence kind of translate to on the stage for you?
So for me, it's kind of like your walk out. Like I was very timid. I feel like the first show, like my walk was kind of like, ooh, just don't be weird. And now it's like, just go for it. Just show up how you're going to show up and be yourself. And, smile and it will show to the judges, it will show to the people watching. So I think that was the fun part, is now I can kind of play around with it a little bit more.
And is that something that, like, as far as the walking and then the posing, is that something that do you feel like you put more into that than you thought you were going to have to put into that?
Oh my gosh, yes. The the walking for sure I thought was going to be the hardest part, because I never wear high heels. But that comes definitely more naturally. The posing is so hard. You know, maintaining your breathing and keeping your stomach in and holding the pose, especially if they're doing comparisons and you're next to your competitor and you're just like, I want to look at them but I can't. So that was huge, and it feels so awkward when you're first starting. And I have posted videos, and the first video I ever posted, I'm just like, what was I doing? And from now, and I've done posing courses with Autumn Cleveland, and I've done some one-on-one sessions with her. And then Miranda has helped me immensely. She did FaceTime calls with me monthly and weekly leading up to the show, and she'll assess my posing, daily leading up to that week of the show. So I put in far more time than I ever thought I would, but I think it paid off in the long run.
I think it's crazy to think like you have to know what you look like without looking at yourself. You have to, it's so crazy. You have to have this like mental picture of what you're going to look like in each, um, even like a pose. There's so many different ways to do a pose. There's so many different ways to like move and contract your muscles in different, different parts of your body. And then you just have to know like, hey, this is what this looks like. And I know this muscle's in this specific kind of like direction, and like this specific, it's coming out this much more than like whatever. And I just think it's crazy to have that much like awareness over the body.
Yeah, and I think that was a huge thing for me, was getting away from the mirror. Like, obviously when you're posing you want to see what it looks like, and I looked in the mirror for weeks and weeks and months, and Miranda's like, you've got to just record it and then view it after. So that's what I started doing. And then it's so funny on stage because anything could happen. So I've lost my balance a little bit on stage, and then your pose is not the way you want it to be, and you're just trying to like just hold the balance. And even the judges, they're like, okay, relax. And you're like, yeah, right. Like, none of us up here are relaxing. So it's always really funny to kind of hear them be like, okay, relax, pose. And I'm like, what is that?
And what goes through your head whenever you're supposed to be like, or you think like this is what this is going to be, and maybe it feels off a little bit, but you don't obviously want to make that big adjustment. Like, what goes through your head? Is it like, hey, maybe I should just like slowly change, or is it just like, okay, this is where I am, I'm going to accept where I am? And like, what goes through your head?
Yeah. So for me, it's more so like, take your time, adjust it, and hit it right. Because I think once you're on stage, you feel like you're on there for 10 minutes when it's truly 10 seconds. So if I'm going to take an extra a second to regain my balance and hit the pose that I want to hit, I'm going to do that. Because the worst thing that they can do is say thank you and I, go off stage. But I think it's just like recentering myself, forgetting that there's an audience, and just like taking in that breath and resetting, without kind of like stepping too far out of the pose.
And being obviously like during prep, your body and your mind as well are in these kind of glass like states. It's like easily breakable, whether that be mentally, emotionally, physically. How does that, like, obviously posing, 6 weeks out from a show, 12 weeks out, whatever, is very, very different. Um, what kind of experience did you have, because your body is in a different state at that point? Like, how does that affect the posing and the show itself, really?
So I think that was definitely had a huge effect on me in the beginning. So when I was starting posing, I was months out. And you're not super lean. You don't really see a lot of muscle definition. I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like, this is not how it's supposed to look. And then as you get leaner and leaner and leaner, you're like, wow, okay, I see what the poses are doing now. So I haven't really gotten into like my growth phase or anything like that, but I think it's going to play into it a lot as I start gaining a little more weight and body fat and things like that. Um, because, you're the most confident, I think, when you're lean and you can see all those muscles. So you're excited to pose and you're excited to get those photos and things. But it's really important to continue that, when you're in your off season or your growth season. So I'm actually interested to see how my mindset plays into that a little bit in the coming months.
Yeah. And how has it been since, doing that last show? Like, how has your mind been from just like being done with the shows and for now? And how have you handled that?
Yeah, so I'm only a week out. I last competed last Friday. Well, not this past Friday, but the one before. So I'm about a week out. So I'm definitely still pretty lean. Miranda has given me my macros, so I had a bit of leniency, but I'm still hitting macros just so I don't overwhelm my body. Um, but it's been really fun getting, some sweets in and adding some protein powders back so the oats taste better and things like that. But right now I feel really, really good. And it's been really fun to hit the gym harder. In the 2 weeks before, I did back-to-back peak weeks. So I did a show in Vegas on a Saturday, and then immediately the following Friday I was at nationals. So back-to-back peak weeks was a little bit rough, and I definitely noticed in the gym, I had to go lighter and be a little more careful and definitely have a little more intention. But now, I'm hitting the gym hard again and I have a lot of energy with all this extra food. So it feels really good.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20. Online at mybapparel.com.
You talked about a couple of those shows. Which one do you feel like was kind of the best experience for you, just all around, not necessarily just the competition side, but the whole experience?
Easily the national show. So North Americans was awesome. It was great because Miranda met me there. So we got an Airbnb and we hung out the whole time. But it was just the smoothest running show I've ever seen. They had places for us to relax and sit down and things like that. And some of the other shows, I think they forgot, like, we might want chairs. So it was really nice to have a place to go. And, backstage, all the girls just had their pillows and blankets all hanging out. And it was really cool to see that number of women in one place with, such a similar goal and mindset. And people that I followed on Instagram, I was seeing in there and I was like, oh my gosh, look at, there she is. So it was just really exciting to kind of be in that area and, felt like I earned it.
What to you was the biggest difference just from the competition? Obviously like better competition, but to you, what was like the biggest standout that makes the difference between like your first show and then at nationals?
I think it was just like the confidence in the room in general. Like nobody's questioning like, oh my gosh, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And so like they're not getting into your head and putting those nerves into you versus like backstage at more regional shows, everybody's like, oh my gosh, are you ready? I'm nervous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous too. So I think it was just like, I almost had to put on a mask, like, no, I'm not nervous. But because I knew, they've been doing it for years and years and they're all very confident and ready and they know their body. And I'm still learning mine, but it was such a cool experience to just be like in the same place as them.
Yeah. And what did it feel like to be, so young in the sport with some people who have been in it for much longer?
Honestly, it felt really good. Everybody's really welcoming. And I think that's the fun thing about bodybuilding is everyone knows that you worked hard to be there. And so no matter where you are in your journey, everyone has respect for that. And, even on team sports in high school, like you'd have those people who are like, oh, I hope you do bad and get taken out of the game so I can get put in. Versus like bodybuilding, you're like, I hope you kill it on stage no matter what the placing is. Like you showed up and you did your best and that's all you can do. And so I really love the outlook that everybody puts into it. So I think that's more fun.
overall, like how has your training evolved just since you began in the world of fitness to now? Like how has it changed, and maybe even past like the training aspect, like the recovery and the emphasis on nutrition? Like how is all that where do you think you're maybe like just like standing out more versus where you were?
So I think, I mean, first off, nutrition was huge for me. Like I definitely went out to eat a lot. I always have made like healthy choices, incorporated protein and veggies and things like that. But now, I just follow my own macros, and I eat out a lot less, so I feel a lot better. But that was the biggest thing for me was I have really bad IBS, and so irritable bowel syndrome, kind of just a rule out syndrome. So I had gone through so many tests before I hired Miranda. Endoscopy, colonoscopy, breath tests, ultrasounds, everything, and the doctors just couldn't find out what was wrong. So they just diagnosed me with IBS. So that's actually a big reason I was putting off, hire a coach, because a lot of days I felt so sick. I was like, there's no way I can get to the gym. There's no way I could hit macros. I just don't feel good. Probably a month after hiring Miranda and really getting my diet in check, like I had no more bloating, no more pain. And really, since I've started, I haven't had any really bad symptoms. So that was like the biggest change for me. And then in regards to training, Miranda and her team, they have weekly calls and things like that where we discuss mindset and training and nutrition and all of this, and kind of just having other people's input on how they train, I can incorporate it into mine. So a big thing that we discuss is like when you feel like you can't do any more reps, just do two more. And so that's kind of what I've pulled into my training is it's like there's always more in the tank. You can always push a little bit harder. And I think now going through a prep, and I've maintained like most of my PRs and things like that. And it's just like, if I can maintain these when I'm hungry, I know I wasn't pushing hard enough when I wasn't hungry. So I'm so excited in these coming months to see what I can actually do now that I'm like, I know what I can do. And I think it just takes, an honesty with yourself. Like sometimes I do know I'm just going through the motions. I'm at the gym and I'm like, I want to get home versus, if I actually sat there and was honest with myself, I knew I could do more. So I think it's just kind of making those promises to yourself and hitting them and let it take you where it takes you. It was a complete 180 for me because I would be every single day extremely bloated, like curled in a ball in pain. And now, I've just limited the foods that I intake, try to eat more whole foods, obviously still treat myself and enjoy other foods. But, honestly, with whole foods, once you start eating them, like, and you realize how much better you feel, you want to continue eating them. And, the more you eat them, the more you kind of experiment with little things, and you can figure out how to make them taste good and still be really, really good for you. And I think that's what I've done. And it's made a world of difference for me. And I no longer have to identify with that. I feel like before bodybuilding, like I identified with my IBS. I'm like, oh, I'm just like a person with IBS. And now I'm like, no, like it doesn't control me. It doesn't control every single day of my life. I'm not in pain, and I'm not going to let myself go back there. So I think I'm very excited to continue with the diet, quote unquote, because now it's just really nutrition. It's not really, a diet.
Moving forward though into your bodybuilding career, like what do you see? Do you have any like for yourself, have you set any goals for, the next year, the next 2 years or whatever? Is it just kind of like taking it as it comes?
I'm definitely kind of taking it as it comes. I think I have a whole lot more to learn, which is exciting. I would love to continue this for the long term. So I think, down the line, as everyone's goal in bodybuilding would be to become a pro. So eventually I would love to hit that level and see where it takes me. But for now, I'm definitely, I'm going to continue on with Miranda with Team Impact. I love it. And I think that I made like such a good choice in regards to coaching. And I think that's important for people getting into it, is like really look into who you're going to hire, because I think that really can make or break your experience. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is your mindset in bodybuilding really, like, obviously it's a lot of nutrition, a lot of working out, but like your mind is what's going to allow you to do those things. And before this, you know, people would ask like, oh, are you an optimist or a pessimist? And it's like, I would have been trying to flip it and been like, oh no, I'm a realist. But like, I truly was a pessimist and I really could find the bad in almost anything. And now, like every single day, I start with gratitude and I'm just such a more positive person. Just because, you know, I've seen what gratitude and what these changes have done. And so I feel like a huge weight is lifted off me, just kind of getting rid of the negative energy. So bodybuilding has completely changed everything.
That's awesome. So it was really good getting to talk to you. I appreciate you coming on here.
Yes, thank you for having me.